Yep.
Okay,
We're good to go.
thank you. Okay, so it's Tuesday, March the 2nd, 2021. We are here for the ATU ECAT negotiations. We can go around and introduce ourselves. I'm Jana Still with the county.
Tanya Ellis, Escambia County Area Transit.
Wesley Hall, Escambia County.
Jim Stanton, ATU 1395.
Mike Laurie, ATU 1395.
Elaine Wiggins, ATU 1395, Financial Secretary.
Michael Battamore with the county.
Kristen Huell with the County Attorney's Office.
Oh, Rodriguez Kimbrough, ECAT.
Now on the video.
We can't see the whole room, but this is Nikki Powell, clerk of court.
Who do you see, by the way? Curtis.
I see Mike and somebody sitting next to Mike in a hat, and that's all I see.
So all you see is myself and Jim Stanton. So we need to move a little
So
bit.
the video is
Yeah,
not
I can see
recording.
somebody to the right of you.
So we don't have the video recording there. The only recording of it is going to be that.
So it doesn't matter,
Yeah.
unless you just really want to see our pretty faces.
I don't know, that's up to Curtis. And Curtis, do you care about seeing everybody?
Can you see Mr. Kimbrough and Mr. Hall?
I can't see any of them.
No, because the camera's there, they'd have to be like.
Do you see Elaine?
I can see the line.
Okay. They got us social distanced.
Yeah, that's it's probably more than the social distance. But
Yeah, it's about 25 feet or more.
Well, if you'd like to rearrange all the tables, you're welcome to.
No,
do
I'm just,
so.
I don't know, it's up to Curtis.
no, I'll just shut my video off and look at y'all. So it's all right.
Okay.
So I'm ready.
All right, we're ready too. How are you today, Curtis?
I'm well, and yourself?
Good, I'm good. It's kind of a nasty day, Pensacola today. You should be glad not to be here in person. It's wet and cold. But
It's hard to do these negotiations being on these videos though, but you know, we'll take it as it comes.
yeah, sure.
Some of my concern, Mike, that, you know, they're dragging on. I seriously would like to meet more often and try to close out these negotiations. This is the only one that I have that is dragging out this long and mutant so far in between. So that's my concerns. I don't know if it's a concern to the county at all, but I'm not used to these contract negotiations dragging out to this many sessions and meeting every other month or so.
Well, we have some contract language that we are willing to present today. But if you have some other thought or approach to this, to move things along, we'll be glad to consider it.
The only thing I was suggesting is meeting more often until we can close it out.
I think some back-to-back days would help. Because sometimes when you've been away so long, I mean, last time we met was back in November, and you come back, you find yourself trying to, going through in the beginning, kind of reestablishing negotiations, when it's been 2-3 months.
Okay.
And, what I think would be more successful, Mike, is that if we have back-to-back days, then the first day, which is probably the reestablishing, the passing back and forth of proposals, there has to be a period of time when you can go back and review those proposals. That would allow for the second day to actually give responses and to actually negotiate and get some articles out of the way.
Well, when Janice gets to us, we'll take that up and consider for the next scheduled session. I guess we kind of have back-to-back this time, but they're just for two different units.
Yeah, it's two different units, that's the problem.
Well, it's very difficult to do back-to-back anyways, and so we
Not
really.
for our side.
Well, it is for ours, and so we like moved mountains in order to do that.
Yeah, but I think that if there's an effort, you know, if there's a will, there's a way, and I think the effort could be, you know, there are articles that that could be addressed that are more operational type stuff that could be, you know, addressed and knocked out of the way. So I hope that you all.
I mean, jumping in here, I just did a contract with Sarasota County, and not only did we meet more frequently, we stayed evening, we get the deal done through 4:30 at night, and we had a whole lot less I've had to do that. So, you know, every time I go to Florida, this is the one that's going on past year. And it's, to me, it can be more productive.
Yeah, you guys even met till like midnight, didn't you, Curtis?
Yeah, that's when we closed the contract out at 12 o'clock midnight.
Yep. I've been in several of those over the years.
How many unions does Sarasota have? Just curious.
They've got about, I don't know exactly how many, but they've got at least 4.
It looks like 3.
3 units?
I know they have police and fire. I know it's us, but I don't know if any other
Yeah,
units.
it's police, fire, and you all.
All right.
All right, well, let's see what we can get to today, because it is what it is for now. Share this with them. Okay. You want to give it to them and then go through it?
Were we gonna ask if they had anything for us?
So how do you wish to move forward today, Mike?
Well, we don't want to preempt everything, so if you have something for us, we're glad to look at it, but we also have some proposals that are counters, and we can give them to you and go through them.
All right, can you email it to me?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Do y'all have anything for us to start out with?
So we have some things we'll give out, but so what the articles that I believe people us might some responses to, I'd like to just go over.
I didn't
Make
hear
sure I'm clear.
What did he say, Mike?
If you could give us yours and then go over them and kind of review them for us.
No. I was saying that I want to go over what the company needs to respond to, what articles are open that they need to respond to us on. I want to make sure
We match up.
that I'm on the same page with the company on that.
Right. We just want to verify that we're all on the same page of what is coming from your side versus what's coming from our side. What articles are open and who gave the last counter is what I think he's asking.
Okay. How does,
Do you want to give us your take on that first?
I can.
Yeah, so Article 1, Article 3, Article 4, Article 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 13, 14, 15, 16, 18, 19, 21, 24, 25, 28, 32, 34, 35, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106, 107, 108, 109, 110, 111, 112, 113, 114, 115, 116, 117, 118, 119, 120, 121, 122, 123, 124, 125, 126, 127, 128, 129, 130, 131, 132, 133, 134, 135, 136, 137, 138, 139, 140, 141, 142, 143, 144, 145, 146, 1 41, 42, 45, 54, 55, and 56 are the ones that I believe you guys need to counter from us. Then we already have Article 11, 12, 22, 23,
Wait, you're breaking up.
27, 29.
So hold up, Curtis, hold up. You said 11, 12, 22, 23, right?
Yes.
Keep going.
27, 29, 30, 40, 43, 50, and 52 have been timed already. And then 38, 46, 47, 51, and 53,
Wait, can you back up? Wait, 38,
46,
uh-huh.
47, 51, and 53 are the ones
That,
should be what we verbally agreed to during the last session.
Well, I think the ones the last ones you read off are articles that we don't have anything, they're not tied to anything. Those last ones,
Okay.
the last ones you read, Curtis, are not tied to any kind of article, they're just numbers we're gonna have to readjust in the end.
Okay, that's cool.
okay. Okay, we agree on the TA's articles, the list that you provided. That sounds accurate. We have counters today for 1, 3, 17, 20, 26, 34, 44, 45, 48, 49, sick leave bank, which I think, I don't know what you were calling that, and general provisions, which was a new article. In addition to that, we did want to mention that it's not terribly productive from our perspective to receive a proposal that is a photocopy of a TA from 2 or 3 years ago. And we would ask that counters, proposals be a new effort in that regard. So in reviewing what was previously provided by the union,
I can barely hear you.
okay, I'll try and yell. For those articles, we would have to reassert our previous proposal. And I believe I counted at least 9. So I think the county still has a proposal pending for Article 2, 31, 33, 36, classifications, job description, maintenance, and 39, maintenance, education, and training.
Okay, do you have, on your notes that
I'm sorry, you're breaking up.
I was saying that, do you have the notes that we verbally agreed to 44, 48, 49, 57?
34, 48, 50, I'm sorry?
49
48, 49.
and 57.
What is 57?
Tell you in 1 second.
Yeah, give us a second.
Tell you in 1 second, give me 1 second.
Yeah.
Is it general provisions?
I think so. I think that's the one that we had Mark Floyd in position.
Okay, and then I have those in our proposal, and I think it's what we discussed the last time.
Okay.
34 uniforms, I don't believe we had any kind of verbal agreement on that, but we do have that in our proposal.
No, I said
You said
44, I'm
44.
sorry.
44, okay, then yes, we
Yes.
have that in our proposal as well, yes.
48 and 49?
Yes, we have those in our proposal, and I believe that is what we discussed the last time.
Okay, thank you.
What about 26?
Seniority, I have that in the proposal as well,
Okay.
yes.
Could you do me one favor, because I didn't get, when you were calling off 1, 3, and then I missed some numbers, could you read out that list again?
Yes, this is what's in our proposal for today. 1, 3, 17, 20, 26, 34, 44 bulletin boards, 45 management, 48 duration, 49 rehire policy, 54, if that's what we're calling it, for sick leave bank, and general provisions.
Let me look at 54 to see if that's what we have listed. Yes.
Okay.
54 is sick.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
So aren't those almost, those are,
Yes, Jana has.
Yeah, and Curtis, yes, Curtis and everyone online, I've gone ahead and emailed the proposals to you all.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
This is a packet.
are these the potential TAs? Is that what we're looking at?
No, this is what.
Oh, this is what you're giving us, okay.
Krista, do you want to go through these?
I can.
Does anyone need one?
Is there an extra packet? I'll take it.
Sure.
Thank you, sir.
And Kirsten, could you please,
Kristen.
I'm sorry. Could you, those articles that you said that you felt that we just photocopied, are you saying, can you read those numbers one more time? I want to make sure I
I
have
didn't
them.
read the numbers, but I can pull them from my notes. I think this is all that I found, at least most recently. 1, 3, 8, 9, 16, 18, 19, 21, 34, that was all I had noted in my notes. So unless, I'd have to go back and review all of them, but that's what I had noted.
And what was your position on 231, or those are the ones you're?
You owe us
You owe-
something.
we owe you,
Yes,
okay.
yes. So I noted from your proposals that you seemed resistant to any sort of reorganization of any of the provisions or consolidation. So in an effort to at least,
Get past that.
yes, I made an attempt to take the terms back to the original sequence and avoid any kind of consolidation. So you'll see in Article 1, we had incorporated union dues into Article 7, as well as bulletin boards. But I've added that back to Article 1.
Okay.
Article 3, we had previously deleted from our proposal. So this is a new proposal for Article 3. 17, I believe, is what we all discussed at our last session. And what is new is highlighted. Same for 20. You had asked for the amount of the felonious assault bond. That has been included. That's already provided. 26 is what we discussed the last time. We added back the reference to Article 51 because we are retaining the rehire policy article. 34, I had reorganized this article to avoid a lot of duplication, and I have taken it back to as close to the original sequencing of these sections as possible, and retained some of what we thought could otherwise be memorialized as an SOP. I've added that back. Uh, 44 bulletin boards, as I mentioned, that was previously put into Article 7. And otherwise, I think the terms are what we had already discussed at the last session. 45, I believe this is what we discussed at the last session, same for 48. 49, same. 54, same, although this provision we had incorporated into Article 21 because it seemed to make sense to put it in the sick leave provision. And general provisions, I believe that is what we discussed the last time.
Okay. Give me 1 second here. All right. So we have proposals for you. And we are giving you counter proposals on Articles 2, 17, 20, 31, 33, 36, and then we are still working on 39, and still discussing that one. But we've got those other articles, so I'll go ahead and give you copies of these.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. So I think it might be productive if we take a caucus and we both go through each other's packets and then we come back.
Okay?
Do
Hey,
you agree?
Micah, do you have this electronically for the individuals that are on the line, if they need a copy? By any chance?
Make
You
sure I-
can send it to Jan, and I guess she can send it to them.
Yeah, I can disperse it to everyone if you have it.
Let's make sure I can do this.
Is there anything you wanted to tell us about your proposal?
So, so bereavement, I think, if you look through bereavement, it's pretty much what we discussed on 17. It's gonna be pretty close to what we all discussed last time. And same with group health. We believe that's similar, and I see you've also got that addressed. As far as in Article 2, we had some discussion as well on that. So I think those 3 articles, you're gonna see that they were kind of tied to our discussions in November. 31, 33, and 36 are basically, it's gonna, Ms. Ellis and Mr. Kimbrough are gonna have to review those to understand the thought process of how we're looking to do extra work and assignment of runs, which is the choose up and things of that nature. We're obviously not in agreement with much of what you gave us on that, as far as the process, but we believe that with further discussions, we can get closer, and where we, giving back and forth and discussing why you're taking a position on some of the things you're doing. So that's basically it. As far as electronically, give me a moment, when we go into our caucus room, I'll shoot it to you. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
All right? All right. I'm just gonna leave the plugs right here.
Let me, while you're doing that, before we get into our caucus, just because it looks like it's pretty straightforward. On Article 17, you say sick leave can be used in conjunction with bereavement. However, should additional time be needed, please see Article 8, leave of absence of this agreement. And we say sick leave cannot be used in conjunction with bereavement leave, and that if you exhaust your bereavement leave, right, then we say, in the event you exhaust bereavement leave, you can use additional, you could use sick leave for additional bereavement leave. That seems to be the only, I'm looking at this quickly, but what? And I guess this is for everybody. What is contemplated that sick leave is used in conjunction or not used in conjunction?
He's looking at you.
I think it was your request.
So,
Because what we're saying is
so
that.
prior to, Mike, prior to on bereavement,
Yeah.
prior to the county, you know, there was no limit as far as an unfortunate situation where you lose family members, right? So, you know, if you, like I did one year, I lost 3 family members almost back to back to back. And, you know, thank goodness there was no one else I lost in my family. So according to what we're saying is that you, I think, is it 9, Jim? Is that what
It's
we
9.
put? We're agreeing to 9, which is kind of off of what we had discussions last November,
I
but.
thought we had discussed 6.
Well,
We had
our,
6.
Yeah.
you
we
said
discussed
6, but we verbally came across and told you our position was we thought 9 was more appropriate. And we verbally said that to you. So, and then beyond that, if there's an unfortunate situation, you have an additional death in the family or others, we're agreeing that at that point it's sick time.
Correct.
That if you have available sick time, you can utilize sick time to get paid.
Well, I'm with you on that. I understand the difference between 9 and 6 is something that we can work through. But there's a sentence in ours that says sick leave cannot be used in conjunction with bereavement leave. And there's a sentence in yours that says sick leave can be used in conjunction with bereavement. And so I'm trying to figure out how the difference is
So-
operational.
I think you have to exhaust, under our proposal, correct me if I'm wrong, you have to exhaust your bereavement before you can then access your sick.
Supplement it with, yeah, sick.
I got it.
Correct.
So that's our intent. Well, would that be your intent too?
So yes, so what you're saying is that for the first 3
No.
individuals.
Yeah, for the first.
They would have to use their 3 days, correct? But let's say the travel is across the country to Seattle, and you ask for a couple additional days, correct?
Yeah, well,
For sick time, and it's approved, but the first 3 would be bereavement.
yeah,
Right?
I think we're both saying the same thing.
Right, I think we are.
We're just saying it in a different way.
Just different ways, but,
But wouldn't you want us, would it be more straightforward to say, you have to exhaust your bereavement leave before you use sick leave? Say it that way?
are you referring to just 3 days? Say it's an individual death,
Yeah.
not 9, not saying if I wanted to take 5 days, then you wouldn't take 5 of my 6 or 9 days that I have available, you wouldn't take 5 of them, would you?
Yeah, I think it says 3 per incident.
Okay,
It says 3 per incident, and then we say twice a year, you say 3 times a year. But yeah, If you were 4 days, it would be 3 days of bereavement and 1 day of sick.
Right.
But I think we're saying the same thing, just saying it different. Am I making sense?
And we're saying you don't get an occurrence for using your sick leave, is what we're also.
If you exhaust your 6 or 9 days, and you do have to use sick leave, but you don't for bereavement, as long as you bring in the documentation for the bereavement, you don't get an occurrence for using your sick leave. It still is documented under bereavement.
Yeah, we're saying the same thing, because we're
Okay.
saying that you're allowed to take sick leave once you've exhausted your bereavement.
But the question he's saying is that we have a process when you use sick leave, you get an occurrence. And so we don't want, when you're on bereavement and you request to use additional days due to fact, for instance, travel, or whatever, you're handling the obligations of your family after
So you're
death.
referring to getting occurrence for using approved sick leave?
Yeah, we do.
I know, I was just making sure that's.
Yeah, and that's what we're saying is under bereavement, you wouldn't.
Yeah, if it's classified under bereavement, you wouldn't get an occurrence for using that sick leave. As long as you provide the documentation and yada, yada.
Okay, well, we're going to
Yeah.
go across to our caucus room.
Oh, so you're going to that one across?
No,
We're all leaving this room, is that what we're saying?
yes, we're leaving.
We're all leaving, okay, because we're going into ours. Okay.
Yeah. We're not going into the caucus with you.
Well, no, I didn't know what you were doing here. I thought you were saying, because Mr. Kimbrough told us our caucus room was across the hallway here. So I didn't know whether you were planning to stay in here, or if you were saying for us to stay in here. That's
I don't think anyone's staying here,
Okay. Very good.
because I don't think we're gonna turn this off. Right?
We won't turn off the Teams, but we'll turn off the recording.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Well, why don't we say, why
And
don't we
Jenna, I'll
set a
send
time
that
to
to you
get back?
when I, in a minute.
Why don't we set a time to get back?
Curtis? Curtis, it's 9:39. 9:39. Mike wants to set a time to come back.
All right, 1 hour? Or you want 30 minutes?
What do you think?
Let's do, I think 1 hour so we can have time to go through what has been given to
How
us.
about we say 1 hour, and then if you all feel that you are ready prior, just shoot
Right.
one of us a message.
No problem. That's why we need a couple days of negotiations, so we can have time to look at things.
By now, we could probably recite it.
I look forward to hearing that.
I was about to say, I'm not glad I'd be impressed.
That's why I look forward to hearing that.
Right, stop this. Pause.
Ready?
All right, it is recording.
Okay, Mike, I'll go through our list from 1 through, XX, if you don't mind.
Sure, go ahead.
Article 1, we're gonna remain open. We'll have to have more time to consider or make a counter.
Okay,
Article 3 is the same. And, Article, 17, we gave you a counter that we want you to consider. There was some differences in what you gave us. Article 20, we can change that last sentence to transit workers instead of operators. Right now, it reads, $100,000 felonious assault bond for bus operators. But that could be for, mechanics as well.
yeah, why would that be?
Excuse me?
Yeah, I'm curious as to why that would be. Because, I mean, the reason why you have an assault bond is you're dealing with the public and you could have an altercation. But someone
Right.
not somebody directly dealing with the public. I mean,
The mechanics they deal with the public too. They drive buses outside the door.
They enter buses,
They do what?
they go on to buses to work on buses while passengers are on buses.
Oh, really?
They handle fare boxes, they make repairs, they do
Wheelchair lifts.
wheelchair
they're
lifts, air
out on the road.
conditioning.
Yeah.
And you talk about the service people, they at the transfer center. They can be outside putting trash and putting something and getting turned off the kitchen. So it needs to retrain.
Okay, I think that's dictated under our insurance policies anyway, so we'd have to consult with risk management to make sure, but we can do that.
Okay. Article 26, under, let me get to it, under where it says 3 times per seniority.
I'm sorry, we can't hear you.
Should read Article 49 instead of 51.
Wait, what?
He's saying section 4,
Okay.
3 types of seniority, under sub 1, which is time and service seniority, that the article called rehire policy, blah, 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 should be 49 instead of 51.
We have it numbered as 51, but it can be adjusted whenever.
Yeah. Is there any
So-
substantive change besides the numbering of the article?
So Mike,
Yeah.
even in your proposal that you gave us, it's Article 49.
Rehire policy?
You gave it to us this morning, and it's Article 49.
Well, if that's the case, then it was not intentional. Okay. I think it was 51 under the old contract language, and we have eliminated a couple of articles, so that can always be adjusted.
All right, besides that change, is there any other change to Article 26?
No, sir.
Wait, yes, there is.
Is there?
Number 2, departmental seniority. Curtis.
Oh, yes, there's one more, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Article 2, it should be, the last two, seniority may be applicable when selecting job schedule, comma, vacation, comma, days off, and choosing buses.
So when selecting job schedules, comma, we'd like to insert vacation selections, comma, days off, and choosing buses.
What section is that, sorry?
That is section 4 under, there are 3 types of seniority, subsection number 2.
Oh, okay, okay, I'm sorry. I was looking at section 2 and I was like, what? Okay. So y'all wanted to add vacations?
Vacation selections.
Behind schedules.
Okay.
Okay.
Next is Article 34. We'd like more time to read that and consider what you have as a long article.
Curtis, when we get a moment, I do have questions, but we'll come back to that.
All right, no problem, Mike. Article 44, TA, on our last one. Article 45 is open. We need more time to absorb that one. Consult with our attorney. Article 48, TA. That's what we agreed to last time. Article 49, Mike, we'd like to, we have already PA'd this article, and it was changed. I don't know why it was changed on 11/20 at 11:14 a.m. We agreed to our language. And so I don't know who went and altered it, but it's been altered. So we would agree to what we would like you to agree, to go back to the original agreement as 11:14 a.m. on 11/20.
I'm sorry. I can't.
That's what we agreed
He's
to
saying
do.
that on November the 20th, we agreed to this article and then we went and changed it.
So what are you saying we agreed to? How is it different?
When we gave.
Mike, I'm not in front of you, Mike, but can you hand them a copy of what we agreed to?
Yeah, on 11/20, we handed you a proposal on the rehire, which I think was probably listed as 51 in ours. And we gave it to you and we passed it across, you all reviewed it, and Mike Manamore, my notes reflect, said that we agree with it. We agree with the language, so we wrote down TA and the date and time, which Curtis gave you the time of 11/14 on 11/20. We were expecting you to provide that so that we could TA it today. But the
Or
language is
do
different.
you have a copy of what you're referring to?
I remember we discussed it and Matamore made a suggestion about how to address the concern.
Everything we TA'd that day, I wrote a date and time down. that
We didn't TA something unless it was actually signed by both parties.
Well, there's the moment
So
of
we
verbal communication.
We went
of
over
TA.
them in detail.
Yeah, we just need to compare it, to be honest with you, so we can look at it, because I don't have that for some reason.
You guys have a clean copy? Well, I have mine.
I got mine wrote on.
Was yours written on?
Yeah.
Okay. Elaine, do you got your book or no? I just want to give them a.
Hold on, I don't mind sending mine, hold on.
Mr. Kimbrough.
I'll get you another copy. Oh. That's there, yeah. There it is, right here. Okay, take your time. Here, let me get it over. Go ahead.
So what this says is that if you're away, it gets in. Is that the difference?
Hey Shannon, I don't know if you know this, but your speaker is on. You may want to mute it.
This is your priority date. I think this is.
I dated it.
Yeah, okay, what do you see as the difference between what we gave you today and 49? I mean, because we're reading it.
Why was it changed, Mike, when you agreed to that language?
Well,
Across the table.
Oh, it's too big.
I think we discussed a resolution, but we didn't necessarily sign off on language. We were gonna bring back a revised document to sign off at the next session. which
That's
is
not the
what
way
we did.
you expressed it at the table.
Well, now
I'm
we're trying to
sorry if you-
understand the difference. Are we
Well,
saying
I
the
think
same
we should
thing?
go back and look at the audio, video of what we agreed to.
Are we saying the same thing?
This is the point.
We'll leave it open and then I think both sides can go back and look at the audio, video.
So it looks like the difference is we're saying that they'll retain their seniority, and the other language was saying that it will be adjusted for the period of the layoff or resignation. Is that what the
So if
difference?
somebody resign, if I'm reading this correctly, somebody resigns from the county, and let's say they're gone for
6 months.
6 months. They get not only their prior seniority date restored, but they would get the 6 months added to their seniority when they weren't working.
So I
Says 1 year.
guess I'm wondering why the language was changed when we had the language that was there. And if you're saying it means pretty much the same thing.
No,
why
we're
did you
we're
change it?
asking for
We're asking because
clarification.
That makes
We
no
don't know.
sense to us at all.
In other words, what you're saying is we want the seniority adjusted when they come back, the time if they were off 90 days or 120. We want the time adjusted, and you're saying that they shouldn't be penalized for the time they're off.
So when you say adjusted, are you saying you want that 120 days added to their seniority or not added?
Not added.
So we are saying the same thing.
We're saying the same
Okay.
thing.
Yeah, we're saying the same.
Yeah, you only add the time that they had.
Okay, we were just wanting to make sure.
Yeah, I guess the only reason we revised the verbiage slightly was because there was point of confusion. We thought y'all were saying y'all wanted it to be adjusted to include the time that the person was not working, so after they resigned.
No,
No,
that
that-
doesn't happen in labor contracts,
No.
we never recognize that, so that's not what we mean by
Okay.
ordinance.
All right, well, then we're on the same page.
Yes, we said we'll receive an adjusted computation date and retain any seniority accrued prior to the date of separation.
Yeah, okay, we're good. We'll figure that
For
out.
the date of resignation, right.
Okay.
Correct.
All right, so that's what we are, 54 is the PA. Admin and double X is the PA admin.
All right, that's fine. What did he say, what did Curtis say about 54?
TA.
TA.
Yeah.
Okay. And what
And
about,
double X is the TA.
okay, so,
We actually said that was gonna be, put in something that brought the on this morning. So,
Hey Curtis, we can't hear you, I'm sorry.
I know, I've sent them texts and emails and tried, it's Shannon's computer. I don't think they're in the room. I'm
Hey,
not
you
sure
can
what's
mute
going
her
on.
from here.
That's what I'm gonna do.
There she goes. Well,
I actually thought that you were gonna be bringing some of these back for TA signatures today. I didn't realize. we
That
were
was
gonna
my intent.
Be looking at them as proposals, like the sick leave bank, the general provisions, because my notes reflect, and the rehire, my notes reflect that we had already verbally agreed to them. We were just waiting for you to type them up and bring them to us so we could sign off on them. But instead, they came across as a
Thought I
proposal.
did, but in any event, you can call them proposals or proposed tentative agreements, whatever you wish.
all right, so,
So will they be typed up for this afternoon for signature?
You have something you can sign off on. I don't have a way to type and print off new copies. I think what we've provided is adequate, don't you?
why can't we get signed?
Yeah, if we got a clean copy somewhere, we could just.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. As long as we got two of them.
Yeah.
One for Mike, one for your side, and one for ours.
so just for clarification, it appears that it was 44, 48, 54, and the general provisions that were TA'd.
Yeah, and 49.
44, 48.
49, we agree to 49, with that understanding that you do not accrue seniority when you're away.
Correct. Okay.
Okay, so this is what we're responding to. If you look at Article 2, what we're responding with our Article 2 on the probationary period with one change.
Hold on, Mike, we gotta go to yours. Okay?
So, what we did was we struck at the end of section 1, the words "with written notice to the union." Are you on ours?
I'm looking.
Hold on one second, let me get there.
Okay,
It's from 10/9/2020.
that's correct.
Yep, just give me 1 second, I got that stack in front of me. I'm coming.
I know.
Okay, I'm ready, Mike.
Okay. Well, what we will do is we will agree to unstrike the language that you proposed with written notice to the union, so that if the county extends the probationary period an additional 30 calendar days, we will provide notice to the union.
Okay.
I think everything else is, we're pretty close, right? Yeah. We're stopping that paragraph right there with written notice to the union. Okay.
And Mike, just real quick, Mike Lowry, I copied you on an email earlier this morning. We had a change in personnel of the person who normally does our new hires and does the new employee orientation. So I've just let her know to make sure she lets you know whenever any bargaining union members are hired and going to
Oh, okay.
orientation. But I copied you on the email, so you'll have her
Okay.
information.
Okay, yeah, I hadn't seen anything lately, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, I probably will at some point. All right, the next thing that we have changed to is on 17. And I think we're still at 6 days, not 9, but for the second paragraph of section 1, it
Of
starts.
what proposal?
Bereavement.
Our proposal from
Of
today.
your proposal?
3/2/21. So in looking at your proposal and what we put on the table today for bereavement, what we're willing to do in the second paragraph in section 1 is strike the sentence that says sick leave cannot be used in conjunction with bereavement leave. So then we pick up the sentence for the remainder of this paragraph. In the event an employee exhausts bereavement leave provided under section 1 above, the employee may use accrued sick leave for additional bereavement leave. And we're willing to add this language. If use of accrued sick leave is approved, no attendance occurrence will be applied.
Okay, repeat it one more time, please.
Sure.
If use of,
If use of accrued sick leave is approved, no attendance occurrence will be applied. That's kind of picking up your language.
Said the use of sick leave is approved, is that the way?
It's
you-
approved, yeah.
If you've exhausted.
And that's after you exhausted, what you're going on is the six days.
Well, 3 days of occurrence.
so,
Our counter had 9 days. Are you staying on your position of 6 days?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
so I just want to make sure I understand on your added language. What you're saying is you get up to 6 days. So if I'm on my third death in the year, I have to get approval to use sick leave to go out on bereavement.
Or if you use more than 3 days.
No, what if I'm on my third death, so the 6 days are gone for the year, and I'm dealing with my third death, which I dealt with. I'd have to ask for approval of Mr. Vincent Barnes to give me approval to allow me to be off for the death. Is that what it's saying?
In other words, what we're asking, you can be turned down. The way we're hearing approval is that we can, if we put in for that bereavement, we could be turned down.
Well,
For lack of
that's,
manpower or
I
something.
think any employee has to ask for any leave.
If it's bereavement, according to what I'm reading here, if it's bereavement, you automatically get the 3
Wait,
days.
can I go back to what you just said? What did you just say? You
I
said
would think any employee would need to ask their supervisor or follow the correct process to get approval to take leave from work.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to make sure I understood the language that you put on there, so I understand now.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mike.
So Article 20, I guess you put a 20 on the table today?
Yeah.
And we put a 20, and let's see how you responded to it.
We just wanted the word bus operators changed to transit workers.
Yeah.
Isn't that right, Curtis?
Yes, that is correct.
All right, well, I'm gonna have to have a caucus to.
Yeah, we
We're
have to
willing
check
to
with
accept
Rich
your
Page.
proposal with the change in transit
Yeah,
workers.
okay. We just have to check with, like Janice said, with risk management and see if that's how that works.
Okay?
Now, 31, 33, and 36, we stand with what we have put on the table.
I'll send you a copy.
So you stand with what you gave us
Original.
on November 20th, correct?
Is that the date?
With no changes.
Well, some of them were October the 9th.
Let me check.
Is that correct, Mike?
I am checking, 1 second. 31 was proposed on the 11/20/20, 32 6/5/20, and 33
32.
11/20/20.
32.
I'm sorry, were you asking 30?
It's 31, 33.
31, 33.
33,
Then those were
36.
11/20/20, yes.
And those were 11/20 as well?
Does somebody have another set of these? That's clean?
Does anybody have a clean copy?
If not, I can
Of the
just,
TA ones,
yeah, those 4.
I can go make copies.
Okay.
Do we have, are those clean copies?
Yeah.
I can make copies.
And 36 was 11/20 as well.
You want me to wait until we finish these copies?
Yeah,
So how are we gonna get through, as a question to you, how are we gonna get through 31, 33, 36? They're very lengthy articles. How are we gonna get through them without sitting in a room and very operational type stuff and having discussions about those with the folks that actually implement it?
Are you suggesting that you have some sort of workshop with the people from?
Yes, I am actually. I'm actually suggesting that I believe that, you know, if the union leadership, right here on this side of the table, because Curtis is not gonna join in this discussion. He knows where our intent is on these 3 articles. If we were to sit down with maybe, I don't know who's on your side, but I would assume Ms. Ellis and Mr. Kimbrough, and maybe Mr. Barnes, or anyone else that you choose to, but, that we could work through each process of this, but just passing paperwork back and forth on this article, or just saying we're sticking with our proposal, we're never gonna work through this.
Yeah, if we keep on copying our
We do.
proposals, it's not gonna get anywhere.
Can we do that today? That is the point of negotiation. We can talk about any article.
Okay, so well, we can think about that. I'll talk to Curtis about that. Curtis, I'm assuming that's
I'm
it, Mike,
listening.
right? I wanted to speak to them about their proposal on uniforms.
Okay.
Okay. I just needed some clarification on some things
Okay.
from our side that was trying to understand what was offered here. Under, let me get to it. So let me make sure I understand. So under section, under section 1, In accordance with the specifications of the county, any deviation or violation of the uniform standards may result in disciplinary action. Okay? So unlike now, where no one's being punished because we haven't had a uniform suppliers for a year and a half almost now, no one's getting disciplined, but once, is this only applied to when we finally have a uniform supplier? Is that what you mean? Is that what the intent is here?
You don't have a uniform supplier?
I thought we had a uniform supplier.
No.
Not that we know of.
We do, the county has, the county has Galls, the other two,
Centos.
Centos and UniFirst. The county has 3 uniform suppliers.
Are employees allowed to utilize those companies at this time?
Mr. Kimberly.
So, the employees, again, we're still waiting, because after speaking with you, Mr. Lowry, you wanted to ensure that, you were able to see all of the uniforms prior to the employees being able to purchase. I have spoken with Galls again this week, and hoping that I'm able to get samples to be able to deliver to you in order for you to be able to make a decision if we will meet the criteria of the bargaining unit employees. Yes, sir. But the only options that we have are UniFirst, Galls, and Centos, because those are the county uniform providers. And I can tell you, as I told you before, outside of this room, Galls has all of the current brands that our current operators currently use. And so I just want to be able to get it in hand so you can visually be able to see that.
Wait a minute,
So-
let's be clear. You're telling me that the uniforms that our employees currently have access to are what our providers provide?
Yes, ma'am.
Why
So
do
wait.
you, why do you need to see them then? I mean,
So
if they're exactly the
that-
same.
That is an untrue statement, so I'm gonna correct that statement.
Okay,
I met with Mr. Hall and Mr. Kimbrough and Ms. Ellis, and when he assured me that the uniforms were exactly the same, I said, you got no issue here.
uh-huh,
No issue on this side. If the uniforms are the same, we got no issue.
yeah,
If they were the exact same uniforms, why would I have an issue?
right.
I just want the uniforms to get to the employees.
So-
Okay, well, that's the same thing I want then. So if I'm hearing right now that that's fine, no issue, I don't even need samples. I can make sure the website is developed and individuals can begin to, because that's what I can say, that's what I didn't understand that way. So, but now I do understand.
I think the
So-
only thing we might have discussed is that when they go to purchase them, there would be samples sitting out so they see them. When they go to make their selections, that your uniform supplier would put out whatever, so they know exactly what's out there. I think that's what was discussed. I don't think it was saying that the union was disagreeing with the uniforms.
Okay, well, it'll be the actual website that they'll be able to go to. So just so it'll be an actual
Right.
website that they can actually visually see, that they can actually choose the sizes. That's, I'm good to know that, so I can sample the issue.
While that's good, the samples need to be on the property, because if members are doing online, I have a lot of properties that do it online. But you need to be able to view and see exactly what size fit you.
Okay,
Merchandise is different than what you purchase online. You can have a 2X when it's tighter than
yeah,
you actually do, and you have to do the process of returning it, so on and so on.
okay,
So-
I don't disagree, I think you're right.
It was more about the
As
sizes.
somebody who as somebody who doesn't like to shop online, I totally get that. So this is what I'm recommending. I don't care if it comes out of my budget. I don't care what you need to order so that they have a sample, put it under my name. But I want, if that's what's holding us up, we gotta have uniforms. So if they need something to feel and touch and put on, order sizes and order one of every size so that they can do that. And I'll figure a way to pay for it.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't want them held up anymore on uniforms.
Okay.
So thank you.
Thank you. So moving on through the.
Hold on, I do have a question on uniforms. I'd like to know the definition of disciplinary action. Is it progressive discipline, what's discipline, open-ended, what is the thing on it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Curtis, I'm sorry, you were breaking up in that one.
He's saying, he wants to know about the disciplinary action and I'm assuming related to the union, to the uniform policy. Yes. So what does that look like?
He's saying, is it progressive? Is it
Right.
progressive?
Yeah, it would, unless otherwise stated, it would follow the same progressive discipline process.
Well, I think it needs to be spelled out, because now it leaves open-ended, and every employee is different.
Okay.
Scenario. I think you guys need to spell it out for us about a result of this.
Part of that,
My message is don't.
So if we say may
Yeah,
result
but
in
what's
progressive
section one?
disciplinary action, that would cover it, right, Curtis?
No, we need to spell out what the disciplinary action is. First time,
So if we say progressive disciplinary
disciplinary action is,
If we,
I need to be able to see.
if we say progressive disciplinary action, it follows the action plan of progressive discipline, which would start with the verbal counseling. No?
I'm suggesting
We
that.
can discipline somebody for violating
the section.
Correct.
We don't
We
need
don't
a
have to put it
contract
in here.
That might-
Okay, can we just take it out then?
All right, well, if we, what else do you have about 34?
We don't know, but those are
So what else do we have? Because Curtis makes.
well, especially, I can tell you section 4.
Well, hold on, Curtis.
Is the problem for me.
Yeah.
I don't know why we would have a right to have our logo represent the workforce.
I think it's covered in the next sentence. So you can wear the emblem or patch of the union.
That's
What
it.
section are you in?
On the left shoulder.
Section 4.
Section 4?
Does that not cover
What?
your logo? and-
Yeah, but what's the reason of it being on the right or the left?
It was on the left and it's still on the left.
So what's the reasoning of removing the language if it's the exact same, logo on,
What's the difference between,
you want it on the left?
It's on the left.
it was always on the left.
Nothing's
We didn't
changed.
change anything.
So
It says
why would you strike through our
circle
language and add new
go on the
language?
right, so-
If it's the same thing.
Okay.
Because it seems like an unnecessary sentence. This contract is very wordy and lengthy as it is, so any unnecessary verbiage could be taken out. It's easier for people to read and clear. If it's already there, we didn't make any changes. We're not suggesting that you change it.
It is there.
I-
And the ATU 1395 logo on the
No,
left
I think
sleeve.
the difference is that it's at the option of that
There you
individual.
go, we were waiting for that, okay. That's what I was waiting for. Okay, so,
And I think that is.
going back up to section 2, Curtis, I just want to ask them a question. So are we saying that all trainees have to provide their own uniforms?
I thought that was the current practice.
All trainees will be required to provide their own clothing during the training probationary period. The trainee must supply the following, then, you
Yes,
know.
that's
Yeah.
what they normally do right now, don't they? They wear their own clothes, a white shirt, dark pants.
Okay, that's an attractive item for hire. Okay.
Can we go back to
Do
section
we do that for
1?
other county employees? I was just curious. Do the other county employees have to wear their own uniform, supply of their own clothes?
I
when they-
supply my own.
I mean, I
clothes
wear
every
my own
day.
clothes.
No, I'm not, let me rephrase that. I mean.
I'm just saying, I mean, you're
any
asking a question, I'm
blue-collar-
answering your
Blue-collar
question.
worker, blue-collar worker. Do they, when they come on board, do they have to?
I don't know that they have
provide
that
their own
stipulated
clothes to
in
go
their
out
CBA.
and dig a ditch or work in a holding pond?
I don't know that it's stipulated in their CBA. They don't have a whole portion dedicated to uniforms in their CBA.
I guess, let me rephrase the
I think
question.
they
then. Do they
rent-
get
they
do they get the
rent
uniform
uniforms,
up front
don't they?
coming?
Yeah, I think they rent the uniforms.
It's all rental.
They rent.
Just like us.
Okay, so let me move on. Under section 3,
Can we move back to section 1 when we get a chance?
about progressive discipline?
About yeah. Because if you have an employee that is chronically not wearing the proper uniform, i.e., once we get the once we get past this and the uniforms are ordered, as far as proper shoes, proper pants,
The whole
that are
sentence
still
is
neat
not needed.
and
We can just.
and clear. Clear in the pants, okay.
Yeah.
What was that?
So I was just saying that we could, because that sentence seems to be causing some
Well,
heartburn, so we
let's
could
see-
just
let's see
remove
what
it.
else they- Let's see what other issues they have.
Okay, so section 3, now, I think this was potentially old language, but not to exceed $60 or $30 for the belt, is that old language?
That is status quo language.
Huh? That's existing language?
I believe so.
Just note that that's problematic, because I'm telling you, buying uniforms and shoes, I don't know if you've ever bought the shoes in the past, they were much more than that.
I believe that these items are provided to the employee by the county, is that correct? So, is that correct?
Yeah, they're able to purchase them.
They're given
They're giving
to
a
the-
stipend.
They're given to the employee.
So they're given.
No, but
Yeah, but you're saying not to.
But I'm open because there's some individuals who may have foot issues and they may have special shoes that I'm aware of, that those shoes may end up being more than $60. Is that what your concerns are?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying that, you know,
I know, just strike out not to exceed.
Yeah, why do we
Correct.
have that, because we're buying them?
that's where I was going with it, not to exceed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because in the previous clothing allowances, for instance, a belt was like 40, 50 bucks, wasn't it? It was outrageous. And the shoes were as upward as over $100, depending on the shoes.
All right, what's next?
So then the paragraph below it, you said, if the employee is terminated or resigns before completing 1 year of continuous service, then the prorated cost of the initial uniform will be deducted from the employee's last paycheck? That's your proposal? I just want to make sure I understand. You're saying you want to deduct if they leave, but if they're terminated, they will return the uniforms. But if
No, it
they
says
leave, if they
terminated.
leave on resigning
Turn
or on their own
uniforms.
will, then the last paycheck will be deducted
It's both.
from uniforms. Okay. All right, let me just see what else. Okay, we did section 4. So on page 10, you struck through the mutually agreed upon the designation of the uniform supplier.
Yes, I think we've explained the issue with that. We have a procurement code.
Yeah. Taking a long time for uniforms for us. And I don't think we've ever fought you hard on the uniform supplier yet. I don't think I've seen that. In fact, when I
Her
met.
point is it's regulated by is it state legislature or ordinance?
No, it's in our code of ordinances.
Code of ordinance that we can't change.
We have to competitively procure the suppliers.
So that means it goes through the RFP process, is that what you're saying?
Or an invitation to bid.
So you have a committee that makes a
It
selection?
depends on how the solicitation is conducted.
So you have, okay,
yeah, but we have that all over. We have that all over. You know, a lot of government agencies do that.
I'm sorry, we can't hear you.
The ATU deals with a lot of governmental agencies, and it's not a problem to have this as part of the process, whether it's a RFP process or not. You still be part of the process. It has to be worded differently than it has to, but excluding us is not.
What's your next concern?
just for informational purposes, when I met with Mr. Kimbrough, Ms. Ellis, and Mr. Hall, I don't think we had a rough time talking about this at all when we met. The union didn't, we just wanted some assurances through our discussions, and those were provided by Mr. Kimbrough and Mr. Hall and Ms. Ellis, and we worked through it. So I don't see where the issue is with this language.
Well, actually, we, at that point, when I pulled up my emails, I think there was a discussion or a MOU that was offered at the time, and then we had our discussions after the
Well,
MOU.
yeah, there was a suggestion that the union create an MOU, and we did, and we provided it, but we never heard back, other than it was not gonna be accepted, or not be discussed after that.
Section 6 is a problem for me.
look,
Section 37.
What, section 6 is a problem?
Section 6, you moved it, is that what you did? You moved it down below? Let me look
Oh,
here.
yes.
To,
It's down in the uniform allowance provision, and then because you wanted to, I think, retain the same arrangement that was in the old contract, each different classification has its own section, and that same provision is in each section.
so I see the, okay. Okay, we understand what you wrote here.
Yeah.
So what happens to, under section 7, the second paragraph? Employees hired after May 31st of the fiscal year will not be eligible to receive an annual clothing allowance. So they're just gonna get the initial, is that correct?
I think that was status quo language in the old contract.
Oh, no, I'm looking at where you underlined, that's all. Is that status quo?
I think that's because it was moved.
Because it was
I honestly
moved?
think that was in the old contract, yes.
Okay, I just wanna make sure we're on the same page, because it was an MOU on this, and I remember there was some confusion because individuals were, hired and then they struggled to get uniforms up until the allowance was issued in October. But I understand the process, what the MOU said, so. Section 8, let me look here.
I don't know if y'all ever addressed my section 6, but that's problematic.
What about section 6? I'm confused.
Mr. Lowry acknowledged that he saw those terms down below in section 7. Was there still an issue with that?
Except the language has been changed a little bit here. Employees who have.
Well, you're
That
welcome to
employees
counter.
may not enter into an establishment whose primary function is to sell alcohol beverages while in uniform.
Do you have a problem with that?
I would prefer to be the policies and procedures.
That was status quo language.
Yeah, I'm just trying to tell you, if you go into an arbitration and somebody say the uniform is not the issue, for whatever reason, something else took place. There's no room to allow an employee to be brought back to work. The arbitrator would have to, rule on the specific language of the contract.
I'm not following.
I'm not either.
Curtis, you gotta explain that one more time.
It says that employees cannot, basically, because the fact, if they're off duty, I don't know how we legally tell somebody, you can't go into an establishment, whether they have on a shirt or not, the uniform, and if they did and something happened, arbitrator would have to rule by this explicit language in this contract. And it's problematic for you. I don't think we need to be agreeing to something like that, like if it's, whether it was an old contract or not. I've had a couple of cases with this, problematic.
No, you can't go to a bar or a package store
Yeah.
in your uniform, so take your shirt off.
I don't disagree that employees shouldn't do something. I don't know if the union in a contract mandate that somebody can't do something legally. It's problematic for us.
That when they're not on the clock, right?
Okay?
Okay? And that's addressing your new section 6 that he's questioning.
That's not new language.
Come on, this part.
I know it's not, but it's section 6 of the agreement.
It's not new language, I understand that, but that's just because something isn't new doesn't mean after it went in this contract and everyone in, it's been problematic.
He doesn't.
So it's
all
currently
I'm
in y'all's
I know, but
CBA,
he's making the point that language is probably language we should be
but we're
looking
telling you it's not from a legal standpoint. The question is the legality of it correct?
Curtis?
No, I just think you object.
Yeah, and I'm not listening, I'm not trying to be funny, but I'm listening to my attorneys, not yours. That language is problematic, that haven't made it,
So
that's
your,
all I'm saying.
your attorneys have.
If you wanna put it, if you wanna put it in the policy, then it's not an issue for us. That's all I'm saying. It's been problematic, it's been, arbitrators have ruled on things, some very similar to this, and it's been very
Well, I think it's in
problematic
the
for us
SOGs for
to tell.
PA, but not in the
we
contract.
has been.
I don't even know, honestly, not many contracts with union stuff in their
With
contract.
us putting provisions in a contract about what they can and cannot
Yeah.
do on their own.
Curtis's suggestion is take it out of the contract. Is what he's saying.
And make it an SOG.
Yes, that's all.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what I hear you saying. That's what I'm saying, that's it.
I mean, we don't support, that, obviously, we're just.
Yeah,
he's
it's not like I'm
suggesting
saying we support it, I'm
that
just
comes
saying.
out of labor.
So just the statement that says employees may not enter an establishment whose primary function, just remove.
Yeah, just that last sentence in that section
Just
6.
that last sentence, yes.
Yeah.
I think it's getting blown up more than what I'm trying to.
Exactly,
Yeah.
yeah. I don't think anybody's on the wrong page, on the side of that. but- I'm just looking through one more thing here, let me see. Yeah, so section 9, well, hold on, 1 second. Section 9, you struck through all the polo shirts and all that kind of language. What's the thought process there of striking through all that?
It's specific, isn't it? Like winter jacket, SMJ 754, windbreaker, summer jacket 201A, and right, raincoat CV 9675. I mean, it's all specific.
So probably the union's biggest issue when it comes to uniform supplier is knowing what we have access to.
Right.
To purchase, and that's, one year you might buy shirts and pants, but you buy a jacket. But the next year, you're not gonna buy another jacket. because
Right.
You don't need it, right?
Uh-huh.
Or you might need shoes, but you might need, that year, you need a belt, you might need a new sweater. We wanna have access to what's available for the employees.
Well,
Like
and I
polo
think-
shirts is something that's been worn by employees during the summer, and we wanna ensure that these kind of things are still gonna be offered.
Well, I think that's what she's saying. Instead of being super, super specific about what is offered, we're just taking out the contract, kind of like what we just did with the other phrase, where we're not necessarily for or against it. We're just taking out the contract, and we can just make it an understanding.
And understanding. See, my fear is that once you take it out of the contract, then suddenly that list shrinks down to limited
Well,
items.
But look, section 5, section 5, letter A and letter B has all the, it says blue golf shirt, which I would take to be a polo.
Right.
Shorts, black belt, non-slip shoes, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think it's all captured, the word raincoat.
Yeah, there's a whole
It
winter
says sweater or
uniform.
windbreaker.
Right.
So I think it's all covered here, it's just not the specific code number.
Okay, well, we'll need to match it up to see if it is in
Okay.
both sections, because I do know that we did an MOU, Ms. Gilly,
Mm-hmm.
because some things were missing from the actual language in the labor agreement. And I think what's added there under section 9 was also tied to when it got specific and listed the codes to those things.
Uh-huh.
It was tied to an MOU that was put in place. And then you have customer service, we see that. So, I guess now that I got some clarifications, we're probably closer than we think, other than a couple things. $400 per physical year. Let me see here. What is it for trolley operators? Is that listed? I didn't check. It says
Yeah.
250
Yeah,
for
there's a
them?
whole,
Part-time and trolleys under
250.
section 8. And this is all intended to memorialize the current practice.
Right. I'm just seeing how close we are.
Get rid of
Sometimes when
all
you
the
talk it out, you get closer, right?
Yeah.
You understand what you're trying to do. I mean, Ms. Gilly helped me a little bit there.
look at you go, Blue Coco.
I will say that there's a couple things that catch my attention that maybe we're not as, we're almost there, but a couple things catch my eye, okay? And,
Well, what are those
that we
things?
wanna change. For instance, training uniforms, for instance, we think that new hires should be issued. I mean, they're already coming off the street, they should be issued uniforms, we think, you
Well,
know.
Well, the
and
problem
I
is-
just, I do want to, I think, I hear exactly what you're saying. I think when you look at what we're requiring of them to wear, and I'm just thinking like when I worked restaurants, I had to wear khaki pants and a white shirt, you know, that kind of thing, things that I probably had. Or, yeah, I may have to go to Sears or JCPenney to buy them. And I think that's kind of what that list kind of looks like. And this is, and Mike, unfortunately, in this, employment environment that we find ourselves in, whether it be animal control or corrections or any of those types of, occupations, we have people going through some training and not making it all the way. And so, fire is a good example, how expensive a fire, uniform is to get someone through. Having that uniform be purchased and somebody not make it through isn't helpful to them or to us. And so that's what I would say. I looked at that list when you were talking about that a while ago. I don't think those are things that you wouldn't be able to readily purchase or have. Maybe what you're saying is you'd like to find a way for us to maybe help the person, have them maybe contribute some funding toward it might be the easier thing.
So there's a difference when the individual comes in as in classroom environment and then when they're out with the trainer on the bus by themselves. I mean, I don't care if they wear jeans or whatever and they're just doing that, right? Because they're training. But when they actually are in revenue service and they're out on the street with passengers, I think it doesn't look professional
When they're
having them.
As soon as they're not they're not trainees any longer.
Well,
As soon as
trust
they
me,
finish
you're,
the
you're,
probationary
you,
period, then the county buys all of these items.
Mike, let's have let's come on.
I just want to make this point. Employees are put out on revenue service while they're training. They're actually physically driving the bus, collecting fares, right? With a trainer on the bus with passengers.
Yes.
That is a fact. And the point that I'm trying to make is, at that point, they're probably making it through there because they have made it through the initial process of probationary period of the classroom, being out there, learning how to maneuver the bus with a trainer, learning the routes. They've already done
so you
all
aren't
that.
saying
Now, they're in the
necessarily-
last stage of probationary period when they are sitting there and they're actually learning, they're driving the bus, and they're operating the bus with passengers and collecting fares. We think they should be in uniform by then.
So, okay, would it be okay if,
What I'm
to
hearing
move
is-
past this, like, if, when they get after the classroom portion, I begin to
Well, that-
make the purchase, are they able to put their actual order in for the actual uniform? So that when they're in their training status, they can actually, be on the bus? I think I'm understanding what he's saying.
Yeah, so what
Yes.
I'm hearing, instead of saying for them to get it immediately upon, entry into the training, is that once they get past a certain point in their training, they should be issued uniforms.
Yeah, I mean, whatever we can come up with that's correct. I understand Ms. Gilly's point,
Yeah.
which is that you have individuals that don't make it through. You usually realize that pretty early in the process. Once they start driving
Say
that bus
that.
and they realize they can't maneuver the bus and they realize they're intimidated by the route.
It's between 5 to 8 weeks according to the individual in the service, but if we did the 8 weeks.
Mike, can we talk about this?
Yes, Curtis,
Yeah,
we can.
I hear what you're saying, so I think we want to try and find a resolution. But I also want to make sure that the resolution is obviously beneficial to both parties because, I'm just telling you in this employment and climate, and it's nothing against ECAT, it's every single entity that we have. Folks will make it 8 weeks and then say, I'm gonna go do something else. It's unbelievable right now.
Yeah, I understand that, but we have existing employees right now, I don't know, do they all have uniforms now, the ones that came out of training? They don't have any uniforms, right? No, they're actually operating out of University of West Florida without uniforms, correct? Yeah, so it's, it doesn't look good for the image of the county. And that's what my concern is. So, but Curtis wants me to talk to him about it, so I
Okay.
will. Oh, and there was one last thing, real quick. We all acknowledge that there's $800 currently for employees that's owed right now, right? since we're gonna be trying to get them to, their access to the uniforms, they're owed 800?
From-
Some of
yes,
them,
the
some of
previous
them.
year, because we said we would honor.
We said
the
we would honor
previous year.
that.
We
We
would honor
agreed
the
to that.
previous year
Right,
that we
okay.
did not have.
Okay. All right, I'll talk to Curtis about the remainder of that. Curtis? That's it for me on uniforms.
Okay, thank you. So, it's 1 o'clock, how do y'all wanna take part?
12 o'clock our time.
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
you
that's
meant
right. Oh.
Linda? Atlanta, sorry.
Yeah. Mike, you wanna take a lunch and then come back and see, what we can, what else can we work through? Maybe sign off on those few?
Okay. Is that, do you wanna step outside and have a, is that what you wanna do?
Oh, I was going to say,
No, I was suggesting that we take, maybe after lunch, we come back and sign off on the one we agreed on. And, maybe see if there's anything else that we can, agree on today, or come close.
Is that what you wanna do? Team?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, good. We'll, let's, what time, it's 11:55 Central Standard Time. Would you say 1 o'clock Central Standard Time?
That's fine.
Yeah,
That works.
I'll
Leave
make
our
copies.
stuff in here.
All right.
We can lock the door, can't we?
We can, I don't have to keep it.
I've never
I
had
think
anything
Kelly does.
stolen out of
Well,
here. I
I'm
mean,
just
I'm just
saying,
saying,
it's-
if anybody wants to take this, they're welcome to
That'd be
it.
pretty bad, we got stuff stolen out of public
Phone.
safety.
Sharon, I mean,
I know.
Jana.
Uh-huh.
Mike.
Okay.
Yes, Curtis,
You can just call me on my phone, we don't have to video until
I will.
after lunch.
I will. I'll call you when we get to, where we're going.
Okay, Mike,
Yes. Which Mike?
Like,
the lead negotiator, Malamore.
Okay.
oh, hey, fun title.
I just have two things that we'd like to discuss and make sure that, before we move forward. The wages, what's our path to, or do we have a path to resolving our wage issue? So that's one, and then the other one is, where are we with the CARES Act money? Because that was allocated for transit. And so with the dedicated transit fund, tax money and, CARES Act money, why are we not trying to resolve our outstanding wage issue? So that's, and then after that, is there anything else today that you believe that we can get close on and try to resolve today?
Okay. I don't know where we are with wages.
We would have to talk
Well,
about new
we've
wages
always
for
told
next
you
year.
that, well, wages, one of the issues with the wages was the ECAT never received the 3%.
Because y'all
And the wage
never,
table.
because you never signed the MOU.
Yeah, the MOU's
The
off the
MOU
table.
was
Correct.
offered, yes, correct, uh-huh.
That is correct, because when negotiating, we have a right to negotiate the MOU, because the way it reads, we've always told you our position on it, and you've never budged off of, you take it this way or you don't take it at all. That's not collective bargaining.
I appreciate that that's your perspective. So Tanya can talk about the 10 million and where we are in terms of the CARES funding and what those funds have been allocated for.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so for the CARES funds that were received in 2020, when we made application to FTA, of that $10.1 million, 1.6 of that was for ADA paratransit, safety and security, which is a requirement that 1% of 101,000 was included, maintenance and equipment, 1.3, and operating assistance, 6.9. That was for FY '20 and FY '21 operating assistance, which includes the salaries for our current employees during the time when we were not collecting fares, as well as currently for this fiscal year. So I guess right now, I guess my question is, what specifically about those funds is I guess the question.
Well, for me, Tanya, we have an outstanding issue about a wage table. We also have an outstanding issue about the 3%. And so we can't understand why why we can't come to some agreement on these issues. If there's so that's the answer to your question, I believe. It doesn't have to be ATU's way 100%, but that's what we call the negotiations for.
I understand that.
How much of the 10.1 is left right now?
When you say.
Mike, go ahead and
Meaning
talk.
towards how much has been reimbursed? Only about 1.9 has been reimbursed at this point in time. As you know, we've had turnover in our finance department. And we right now are hoping to get another portion of those, the current salaries for October, November, Mr. Kimbrough. They'll be drawn down hopefully within the next 2 weeks.
So 1.6 was for ECCT?
For paratransit trips and fuel, 1.6.
Fuel?
Mm-hmm, the fuel that paratransit utilizes, yes.
What about operation of wages and stuff?
It pays, we pay ITL per trip for paratransit services.
Right.
So it is included in that, that $1.6 million per trip rate.
So the cost of the labor cost is included in the per trip. Is that correct? Because they took reductions in pay, some of them, because of the hours ITL cut them. So I'm just kind of curious. A lot of the employees took reduction of hours. They weren't getting their full 40 hours a week.
Okay.
Is that to be reimbursed to them? So they
That,
can
I
get
don't
their
know,
full
that would
40?
be something, a question for ITL, based on the contract that the county has with ITL Solutions for paratransit services. Based on that contractual trip rate, that's what's incorporated into that 1.6 million.
So
That
the
was for
is-
FY20 and FY21.
So 1.6 has it been given to ITL to use, or
Well, it's not, one
It's
that's
given through the
given,
county?
it's
was reimbursed?
Well, okay, the best way to explain it, nothing has been, okay, the way the funding is drawn down, you have to actually do a draw. There hasn't been a draw. Only thing that's been drawn down is about $1.9 billion out of the 10.1.
Right.
And so there's not like we just give ITL Solutions the money. That actually takes care of all the operating expenses that we pay them, the per trip, the preventive maintenance, all those things. It's all detailed in the way that it's paid out. But no, there hasn't been a, like, here, ITL, here's this funding for you. That's not how it actually works.
Well, there's still about $8 million that's still sitting there that has to be drawn from.
Yeah,
Yes.
and the way that actually works is when we got our funding, it's broken out in a 3-year period. So there isn't $10.1 million that we actually have that
In a
we are
check.
just being in a check right now. That's not in our bank account or our funding right now. And there's actually, anytime that there is a grant, it has to be,
They
it's
reimburse
outlined, on how it will be reimbursed. So I guess, I don't know, I'm just trying to answer your question in the best way possible, what I'm understanding your question, but we don't have $10.1 million just there right now.
Well, I know you don't have 10.1, but you do have almost 8, right? Is that right? So let me,
to
I
be
guess
drawn down.
my question is, for instance, could it be used for the barriers put on the buses?
The temporary, the ones that we currently have on there, those temporary ones, those were included in those expenses. Did we already get those reimbursed, Mr. Kimber? I'm not for sure specifically. But for any additional barriers, we would have to go back to FTA, because what we applied for and what the board approved was the items that I just described. So that means they would have to be a budget revision to the grant. They would have to be approved by FTA, as well as the BOCC, prior to, if there was a change of funds. And since those are capital, they're not operating, that would put us in a different lane than it would for the current expenses.
Okay, but the sneeze shields were given to you guys from Lynx, right? You're referring to the installation of them, right? Is that what you're?
Yes, and some, the ones for the
So, that couldn't have been
cutaways
that.
were not, those were purchased with plexiglass that I believe the maintenance department purchased. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Kimbrough.
Couldn't have been a whole lot, though.
Well, I'm not sure what the,
I guess when I'm referring to actual bus shields.
okay, those would be
Because I-
capital items, and those we'd have to go back to FTA and request to utilize CARES funds for a capital item. Majority of our CARES funds are for operation, what's considered operational assistance.
Ms. Ellis, I attended a county commission meeting where I watched the interaction of commissioners talk about going out and getting those official bus compartment barriers. They literally had a communication and said, go do it, let's do it. I heard them say it, and, but that was months ago now, and I'm trying to figure out where we're at. That's why I'm asking the question here, because as you know, that's one of our big issues in labor negotiations, is to, at some point, get bus barriers put on, it's protective bus
Permanent
barriers, not sneeze shields, but barriers that protect operators from potential assaults. So I was curious, a lot of transit systems across the state of Florida are consistently putting them on their buses. Now, not all of them have reached the point where they've got to all their fleet, but they're working on it. I mean, if you look at Gainesville, they're working on it. They're working maybe not at the speed that the union would like, but they're putting them on there. You look at Hart, you can just go across the state in the various locations. They're working diligently, and I'm just trying to find out where we're at as a transit system here in Escambia County, where we're at with the ability and the focus of putting barriers up, because we began some discussions on this not too long, well, a few months back, but I haven't heard a word since, so I'm kind of curious, where on the CARES Act would that be?
Well, for any changes to the CARES Act, we would have to take it back to FTA for them to approve a budget revision from operating assistance to capital assistance. And that means that would be less funds for under operating, because as you know, the majority of FY20, we did not collect fares. Yet we did not lay anyone off, we did not furlough anyone. So those were still expenses. So that is to help to, one, cover a large portion of those percentages of expenses during FY20 under the operating assistance. That's why that's the largest amount of the CARES funds.
What's the estimated amount of loss for fares during this past? I mean, you don't have to do up to date through March for this new fiscal year, but up through September 30th of last year, what was the estimated loss of fares?
Well over 50%.
Okay, a number, like a dollar
I
number.
mean,
What normally do we collect in fares over a year? What do we normally collect?
a little under $1 million.
Right, that's what I thought, under $1 million. So it was about 500,000 or 600,000, somewhere in there we lost in fares, up through October 1st, is that correct? Estimate?
Up to January 26th, when we went back to fare collection.
Okay.
I mean, with that question that you asked about the CARES, if you go to, I know you have a public record request number 2021-19.
Right.
If you got the documentation because you paid for it, if you need to go over that with me, I'm willing to open up my schedule at any time to be able to explain to you exactly. If you have it right now, I can walk over there and I can show you exactly. That breakdown explains how the money was actually proposed to FTA on how to be spent, and now a drawdown.
And what
that's
was
something
approved by the Board of County Commissioners.
Yes, and just for the drawdown, I would have to explain to you how actually drawdown works, because I think that's.
I get that, but I guess what I'm trying to figure out is I see the commissioners speak about barriers. And they literally say, and I looked at the video and had Ms. Ellis go to the podium and speak, and they're saying, do it, let's go get them. And then why wasn't it adjusted to include this for capital, as you say?
So, I mean, that could be done, but I think the process on how it works, I think that's the part that needs to be better explained, or better explained to you, that you will be able to understand how long that actual process works, on even when I say the drawdown. So when you say there's about $8 million left, there is a reason. Well, when Ms. Ellis just heard us state, as we did the turnover, there hasn't been a drawdown that has occurred. And so we're looking to be able to get a drawdown for some of the actual capital improvements that we've already said that we're going to do, but we have to do a draw first. And I think that's the part that has to be explained, or as some education and communication can, happen between both parties, where I don't mind explaining how that works.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
That would be good to do that, because that.
Because it'll help your question.
And I know both you and Ms. Ellis would be willing to do that for me,
Yes,
to
sir.
work through it. But I just want to understand, because, you know, I see other transit systems getting barriers, putting their system, and a lot of them saying it's tied to the CARES Act money they got. And I'm trying to figure out why we haven't made that move as well,
It may be because that's what they initially applied for.
right?
I'm not sure, but that's not what Escambia County initially applied for and voted and approved and what was submitted to FTA.
Are you open to that? To getting to the point where we work to retrofit some barriers into our buses?
I'd be open to a conversation about future funds, but as far as the CARES funds, us going backwards, then we'd still have to find means to pay for all those expenses during the time period that those funds are being allocated for.
So Tanya, let me jump in right quick, because even though the FTA CARES Act money was applied for similar to, like you apply for your regular grants, it was, open-ended, not like the regular grants. It was able to use it in a variety of ways.
That is correct.
So I want you to know, first and foremost, I agree with you, but there was more flexibility in this CARES Act money than it was in a normal grant.
I agree with you. Yes, there was more flexibility. However, at the time when the Escambia County submitted their application, we submitted it primarily for operating assistance, not for capital supplies at the time. So if we're going to fundamentally change the functionality of the way that we submitted for that application, that means it's going to require more steps and approval through FTA than it is currently as we speak. Now, I'm open to having a conversation for funds that under our other grants, under 5339, which is bus and bus facilities, or our FY21 5307 grant. But as far as the CARES funds, if we're going to go back and fundamentally change what we applied for, what the board approved, would take some time, and that could therefore hold up any draws of those funds until that revision is either approved or submitted. So that's my only concern, is that means that's gonna further delay those funds if we are gonna fundamentally change it from operating to capital.
Thank you for explaining that.
Oh, no problem.
I just am, always concerned, because I always see, whatever happened in Tampa, Florida with Thomas Dunn, the murder of Thomas Dunn, but there are assaults that happen all the time in mass transit across this country. And now the burden is even more intense on transit operators, more than many other people, because we see so many people on a daily basis. And during COVID, we have interaction with people. Now we're tasked with the idea that there's an executive order, a health order, that says that they must wear a mask, which we support. Obviously, we support and we want. But I'm also fearful that there potentially could lead to, and because we have not reached an agreement or finalized, in my opinion, the idea of how to protect the operators from engaging in a conversation with a passenger that wants to object to wearing a mask. And, let's just be, reality is, not everybody's gonna respond the same way when they give a response to a passenger. And I worry that there's gonna be a bad, serious moment. We've seen some moments across this country that just because of the mask issue, of enforcement of the mask issue, that people have been in bad situations. One person had fluids, and we won't talk about the fluids, what they are, but nasty fluids thrown on them because they were enforcing a mask mandate on the bus. And I just worry, without these barriers on the buses, as we move forward, we're potentially subjecting my members to someday being put in a bad situation. And I think this is something that both sides should be working towards together it's just like the conversation of the mask mandate. We never completed it. We never finalized it. We began it, but we didn't finish it to what I expected we were gonna do, which was come away with an agreement, especially the idea of telling the operators that they're not the mask police. You are there to point out the CDC requirement that's posted. You're there to tell them there's masks on the bus. But beyond that, you don't want them to say, listen, you're not riding my bus without a mask. Or the point where they pick up the radio and on an open air radio, they're calling in. They're calling in. And the passenger is hearing that they're calling in on them because they're not wearing a mask or not wearing a mask properly on a transit bus. That is the same scenario as what happened in Tampa, Florida, where the driver just simply told the rider, the fare, you're required to pay a fare. And then the person came up and killed the driver. God forbid this is ever gonna happen, but I just think we should be, when we talk about safety, we should always be working together to get to this point where we're all on the same page, because I know the personalities of the people I represent. Some will do just like we just said. If we tell them, they're not gonna push it. They're not, if I drove the bus, I would be telling someone, there's a CDC requirement, the mask is required. I would call into dispatch, give you a code, and that's about as far as I'd wanna go, because I wouldn't wanna engage the passenger. But you have other operators that might go a step too further. And I don't want that, because I'm afraid they're gonna get in a situation that's gonna be dangerous. So I feel like we should be talking about these things, and ultimately the barrier is one way of protecting the operator from that moment of an assault.
So, and I hear what you're saying, Mike, and I know we've had multiple conversations about the mask policy, the mask requirement policy, and I know some of the concerns you have are more so on the procedural or implementation if someone does not follow those guidelines, which to me is separate from the policy that we're required by FTA, TSA, as well as the CDC guidelines and the president's executive order.
Right.
So I know we may differ on the procedural piece, but on the policy that I provided is the policy. So I know there's some things that in your email that you responded back to, just as when you and I and met with me and Mr. Kimber met with you and your team, that some of the concerns that y'all had as far as particular scenarios. To me, which is, like I said, again, two separate things, the policy versus procedurally. As far as the barriers, right now we do have, you call them sneeze guards, I call them, they're still a form of protection. It may not be the permanent enclosed door-like bus enclosures, but they are some level of protection until we're able to get some form of a more permanent situation with a bus barrier. So I have, and I said it at the dais when they asked me to come to the podium, not from the dais, but from the podium, multiple months ago when the commissioners asked. I said I was open to that conversation regarding these particular funds from the CARES Act, which we applied for back in, I believe it was June or July of last year, that right now, that if we're going to fundamentally change those funds will reimburse for all the operational expenses. That means bus operator salaries, mechanic salaries, our salaries that were being paid for when we were in a state of emergency, when we were still doing additional runs, doing additional trips that were above and beyond our normal budget. That's what a large portion of those funds are being utilized for as operating assistance. So if we're gonna fundamentally change it to a capital funds, that means we'll have to halt those funds and then apply for that budget revision. But I said I'm open to conversations for future grants that we're applying for to specifically state that.
Right, I get that.
So I
I'm a
guess.
little confused on the part about the funding of employees, their, paying their salaries and things like that. I'm a little confused. You said additional trips, right?
Yes.
The workforce at ECAT has shrunk immensely. So I don't understand, you're still getting the same gas tax that's coming in. Maybe you can educate me to this. You're still, the system is funded for operational side, isn't it funded through the 4-cent gas tax?
No.
A lot of it?
No.
A lot of it?
No, the majority, that's local match.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the, I guess, the part that's, maybe more misunderstood. The money that we get from the gas tax pays for, a large portion of it is for our local match, for our federal and state grants, as well as any overages, including from TD, for Transportation Disadvantage, or ADA. That's what the majority of our gas tax is utilized for. It is not used to pay anything above and beyond, because when we have our grants that are 80-20, 80% federal, 20% local, that 20% match comes from the gas tax. Same thing with our grants that are 50-50, our operating assistance grants. We get from FDOT, Florida Department of Transportation, or from the feds. That 50% match comes from the gas tax. So those funds are not just above and beyond sitting out there. I'd love to have a conversation with you if you want. We can go over the ECAT's budget and where those funds come from and what do they do. Me and Mr. Kimber could sit down with you and go over, because I think that's probably a misunderstanding and
Okay.
misinterpretation,
We all
that
need
our
to get
gas
down
tax
at
is
the
this
table.
money that's extra above and beyond sitting here. No, that money is very uniquely tied to the grant reimbursements that we get from the federal government as well as the state government.
Okay,
Why don't you go ahead and do that? That's a
we will.
We will, we'll schedule,
But I do
yes.
wanna go one step
So we can
further.
all sit
Yes,
down
sir.
and try to come to a meeting of minds, and I think that would be a good thing. So we'll be happy to sit down with you and go through, as she said, the whole budget, so that we're all on the same page. And again, we want the same thing. You want protection for our drivers
Right.
and the guys that come to work and feel safe and secure.
Right.
So we'll be happy to sit down with you and we'll schedule something.
I appreciate that, Mr. Hall.
Thank you.
I do wanna ask a question about, and Curtis, I'm not trying to take up too much time, but this is questions I never get to ask. So, the status of the workforce right now, and as I started to say, I mean, you can go to your own Escambia County website, and it shows that you're 10+ drivers down, but it's probably more than that. It's probably closer to 15 drivers down. The workforce has been under extreme pressure. Extreme pressure. And the workforce is being asked to work a lot of overtime and a lot of floating holidays and things that are earned benefits are being denied without being told why. And I think that this is what's happening is a lot of employees are stepping up and they're working, but they're pushing themselves to where I consider to be scary. It's nervous. It's where they're gonna make mistakes. They'll have an accident, or they'll have a confrontation on a bus, or for instance, they'll just call out. Because they get to the point where they work so many hours overtime, they gotta take off, because, I know that some in the room don't drive for a living, right? But driving for a living, it wears on you. You are constantly, always, when you're on the road, dealing with passengers, you're constantly got things moving around you, you've got that defensive barrier around the bus, and you're always trying to protect yourself, and you're always trying to find out, as we're always taught. But these operators are under extreme pressure right now, extreme. And there's been things that have happened, denials of floating holidays, the operators having to call out because they can't get time off. The question leads to this. I heard Ms. Gilly say that, workforce, it's hard to get people to apply. But what are we doing to get the workforce level back up from the county? Because it's not happening, and the only thing that's happening is the workforce is being put under stress. So I'm trying to find out from my membership.
I do have a curiosity for you, like literally what's your solution? We're really having a hard time recruiting on all fronts throughout the county, everywhere, because people just don't really want to come to work right now. So what would be a possible solution to get our recruitment up?
So possible recruitment would be, number one, get the wages to industry standards, okay?
What do you consider industry standard?
Well, Sarasota just gave, Curtis, can you help me out? What did Sarasota just give their employees that were making, Sarasota's is about the same size system as we are, and
Yeah.
Curtis is better at this, so I'll
Yeah,
let
I've
Curtis.
read their entire CBA.
Well, the new one?
Yes.
You couldn't read.
Well, okay, so I read the one that
They
expired
just
in
ratified
September
it,
the
so I don't
30th.
think you read
The
them.
one that expired September the 30th, 2020, and then I read the board minutes adopting the new one.
Okay, Curtis, go ahead.
Well, I just negotiated the new one.
Yeah.
They started out in 1925. We went up to 2075. And every year after that, which is 2175 and 2275. So in 23,
So you
they
think the
will be at
wages alone are the issue?
2275.
And that's over a 3-year contract, right, Curtis? We actually,
3-year contract.
you actually negotiated wages
That's
for
what
each
top
year.
pay is.
So you think the
what
wages
what we
alone
did
are
at
the
the
issue?
bottom- What we did at the bottom is we brought the
I'm gonna
scale up as well, to almost $15 because, Florida will be moving to a high minimum wage anyway, so they wanted to stay above that. So we moved, the bottom tier, to almost $15, and we increased it, and then in the last jump right before you top out, when you go to top pay, you get like a $3 increase.
So, Jenna, to answer your question, I think that was a great question what you asked, because it's
Yeah.
important, because recruitment is down, right? Okay, I personally, if I go to your website right now and look at your job description, right? And I look at your job description for a bus operator. If you pull it up right now, and it lists the job for a bus operator, professional bus operator, full-time, it will say on your website, what is minimum wage, $8.56, I think it is?
It's eight-
$8.56,
Or
and
it's
then dash,
865, I think it just changed. It changed January the 1st, sorry.
what's that? The-
865.
Whatever it is, right?
Yeah, sorry.
It's still $8 and change, to $14.75 is what it says.
Mhm.
That is on your website. If I'm a professional transit operator that's thinking about moving to Florida, and I look at Pensacola, Escambia County, and I look at Pensacola, and I pull up, and I go to on the internet, and I look at Escambia County's website, and I see that with a CDL, and then I see the job descriptions below it. And then I go to Sarasota County, or I go to, it doesn't matter where I go. If I go to Gainesville and I see their wages are over $20 an hour, then you're not promoting the truth, because you're not telling them that after 3 years of service, you're gonna be at this rate.
So do you think if we represented the entire wage progression on there, on the job posting itself, so they can see where they'll be at, that would help?
I think that. But I also think that you have to get to the industry standard. That's why we're talking about wages. You want to attract professional bus operators that do this for a living, the ones that are serious. We had one that you just recruited from Mobile, Alabama, right? They came over. She said, she looked me in the eye and said, you know what, Mr. Lowry, I don't know if I can stay at these wages. She's telling me this. Not that she hasn't left yet, she's with us, but that, she was making 19 something an hour over in Mobile. And now she's making she finally now is up to whatever it is, 14 something. So I'm just pointing out to you that recruitment is based on the job. And while Miss Gilly didn't want to talk about wages, wages is an important aspect so that Miss Ellis and Mr. Kimbrough can recruit qualified people that are going to stay.
I do want to make that correction. It's not that Ms. Gilly did not want to talk about wages. I don't think that she said that at any point during this session.
Okay.
I don't think she said that. I mean, I just want to be clear, because she's not here in her defense to say that.
Well, she kind of took a way of saying, moving on right out of it. So I took it as she didn't want to talk about it. But I think it's important because, to recruit qualified people, well, we might all be, I saw that on your agenda for Thursday, that you have a whole thing about minimum
scale.
wage, right?
Yeah.
So some of that might be played into after the minimum wage if it's done by, whether it's done here at the state level or at the federal level, that might.
Yeah, so to be clear, that it's not that we didn't want to talk about wages, it's this, that we know that there's a pay scale item on the board agenda on Thursday that will determine a lot of things, and we told the board we would negotiate, if they approved that scale, we would negotiate with all the unions utilizing that scale.
Right, I saw that was what your intent was in the, but I guess where I'm just going with this is that I can tell you right now, the membership is very concerned about their wages. And I think you're losing individuals, you're not being able to recruit individuals. I mean, you're struggling, no offense, Mr. Kimbrough, I'm just gonna help you out here, in the sense that you have 4 individuals on the trolley side right now that are ready to move over to the bus side, but I know that's probably a difficult move, because then you open up the trolley side, right, Ms. Ellis? And that puts you in a jam, and from the union perspective, we don't want that to happen either. We want full staff, but we can't, without wages being addressed and discussed and looked at, am I really gonna go out and try to help you recruit people? I don't know how, but I think you're hurting yourself.
Well, I just want to answer your first initial question before Jenna
not
made her comment. When you ask, what are we doing regarding recruitment? Me and Mr. Kimbrough have been working on going back to what was done years ago, even when Ted Wilcock was here. Is one of the things is trying to get people trained and certified with their CDL internally. And I know that's something that Commissioner May has been a push for. I know that other departments in the county have had some similar issues of finding qualified individuals with CDLs already walking in the door. And I know previously at ECAT that they were able to get their CDL while at ECAT. So one of the things that we're working on now, Mr. Kimbrough's working very closely with the state, so we can go ahead and get that program back at ECAT. Where then a person may come in the door, they may be a great candidate, may not have their CDL, but working at ECAT, part of that training process is having someone that's a trainer and having someone that's a tester at ECAT or within the county to get their CDL. So hopefully that will open up the.
So, Tanya?
Yes, sir.
Tanya, that is a very good thing, and we would fully support that.
Love
What
it.
you need to be careful of is the property that I represent, meaning in ATU, because ATU doesn't have all of them. When they do that, a lot of people look at the wages, they come to your property to get their CDL, and then they'll take that CDL and go over the road or go somewhere
So we're
else
also working with
that's
legal
paying higher,
for that.
UPS and other things like that. So just be careful about how you move in that direction, because pay will become the concern.
So we thought about that. So we're actually, it's actually a huge team effort. HR has been working with legal on making sure that we get a contract together that will stipulate that if the county pays for them to get their CDL and gives them that training and their CDL, that they are required to provide certain years of a service. And that's something that a conversation will be had down the road with the union. We're not discluding y'all once we kind of have more ground to set everything up, but we're looking at 2 years to say that you have to remain full-time with the county for 2 years.
Yeah, but your real goal.
So let me say this to you. I'm a maintenance guy. I can say this to you. And I'm not making this about transportation because I wouldn't know it to be speaking from a place of facts. However, when you lock people in, you don't attract people. Because when I had maintenance, I was over the maintenance training for the union here at Marvin, I couldn't get people to transfer from one place to the other or even come into the program because they wanted to lock them in for 2 years after the training. They wouldn't even allow them to go from being a mechanic in the bus section to paratransit or paratransit over to the rail side. And the mechanic was a mechanic here on the property. They wanted you to lock into one specific area, bus or rail. I'm telling you that doesn't work and attract people in transportation. People that want a CDL won't come because you're locking them in for 2 years. People don't want to be locked in. Nowadays, people don't want to be locked in for a cell phone bill. Everybody wants to go month to month on things. The concept out here in today's society is not about locking somebody in to do something. It's their free will and choice. Just a heads up.
Yeah, and so we're not saying that we necessarily lock them into a certain position to relegate them. That it was basically going to say that they have to maintain full-time employment with the county, wherever that is within the county. Again, it would be a conversation down the road. We didn't want to have that conversation until we had the program established because there was no sense in talking about the contract part of it until we know full well that we can move forward with the program.
So Jen, I just want to add this. Retainment is your goal. Your goal is, if you're going to invest, and I think that's a great program. I've told Mr. Kimbrough and Ms. Ellis that. I would love to see that program, and Curtis is right. We would support it 100%. But you know, Curtis is absolutely right. You know, if I'm locked in for 2 years, and then I notice that the wages are not at industry standards are not even improving over the last few years, I'll go I'll get a CDL somewhere else and then go to some other location. So this has to be a team effort on both sides here to get qualified people and get them to stay. And I know, Jenna, maybe you don't know this, but for 25 years, I've watched the transit system and people stay for long term, because the wages were decent. Mechanics' wages were going up, correct? Through the ASC programs, we had retainment, and people used to say, hey, that's a lifer job at ECAT. For years, they would say that. Am I wrong for saying that?
No.
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 And you know, it was like, if you can get on with the ECAT, you're gonna be there for life. You can't say that anymore. And that's the fear. And what I really worry about, besides your program, because I don't know when that will ever happen, but what I really fear for is my existing members right now, because they're reaching the point where they're just about.
Well, I think Brian can talk to you about what's considered industry standard in terms of salary, but I've got to go to this next meeting.
And also, we are putting together a job fair that's coming up in April to help us with recruitment. And we understand where we are from a wage aspect. That's something we'd have to get Ms. Gilly involved with, and also our board. But we understand where we are. And again, we have a job fair coming up at the latter part of April to try to get some quality recruits there. It's not something that we're facing here alone. We're seeing this statewide, not nationwide. So, and I think we're looking forward to any help that you all will be able to offer us. And again, the CDL is one piece of it, and I think that would be a significant help to us, getting some quality individuals through the door, so we continue to have the great service and outstanding services that your drivers are currently providing.
And Mr. Hall, I agree. I agree with, recruiting good people is absolutely, but again, I'm kind of focused about the existing employees.
I understand.
I feel like we're not protecting them. We're not giving them incentive to stay.
Mhm.
We're not giving them the things to make them feel good about their own transit system. A pay raise is definitely something that makes people feel a little bit better. But when you haven't got a pay raise, and this is 2021, and the last one you got was October 1st, 2018, that's problematic. And especially when you see other employees throughout the county, including those in your own building that are non-bargaining, getting raises, and you're not.
I understand.
That is problematic, because that makes them think, well, we're being looked at as different.
Yes, sir.
And that's why the effort on both sides to sit at the table and hash out, as unions and management have done for years, working through wage arguments, should happen. And which is what they did in Sarasota. They worked through it, they came away with an outcome. I'm just saying that, the answer of, well, you didn't sign the MOU, that's not an answer to me. That's not discussing the real effect of what, to this day, I do know. The longer you don't pay us a raise, the longer you save money, I get that. But the point that I'm trying to say to you is it doesn't mean you're helping your workforce. You're not making your workforce happy. And, something like that should be a commitment by both sides to work through right now. And I'm curious, and the reason I asked you about the CARES Act, the reason I'm asking about the gas tax is I'm trying to find out, are you saying there's no money for wages?
Well,
I'm not saying
this is,
about wages.
if you don't mind, Tanya.
Go ahead.
First off, I think it's a great conversation. I appreciate it. I appreciate everybody's thoughts and perspective. We've been kind of at it for an hour. The third piece of business that Curtis brought up an hour ago was whether or not we had anything for this afternoon for the purpose of collective bargaining. There's two things that you gave us today. Seniority, a change in seniority, a change in some changes, several changes to uniforms, 34. We're gonna have to take both of those back and think about that change, those proposed changes. There was an issue on to change the words bus operators to transit workers, and Jana has to talk to risk management about that. So we don't have anything else for this afternoon.
Okay, well, and Curtis, I'm sorry to jump in here, but I do want to, there are a lot of articles still open, Mike. And so I guess what it's very difficult to go back to my membership and tell them we signed off on duration of agreement, sick leave bank, bulletin boards, general provisions. It's very difficult to go back to them and break that news. To break that news is rough. Without them, they're going to first obviously ask about wages, but they're going to ask about the other articles. But why don't, it was insinuated in the early part of this that there's some articles that both sides don't necessarily have to be in this structure, that are very lengthy articles, that both sides would agree that we need to work through. I mean, I guess maybe I'm judging your side, and I'm sorry if that's wrong, but I would think that Ms. Ellis and Mr. Kimbrough would be the experts about articles like Article 31, 33, 36, those kind of articles that are operational more than anything. Why aren't we agreeing to allow the union and them come together? Because those take a lot of time. This is a fact, Mike. If we sat here and discussed Article 36, which is extra, Article 33, sorry. Article 33, extra work. If we talked that article, we would spend all day talking about it until we work through it. That's how much discussion would occur. I guarantee you, right, we could spend several hours working through, because we would be trying to find out what the other side wants versus what we want and work. It's not as easy because it impacts the workforce so much, Mike, on a day-to-day basis, on how they receive their overtime and things of that nature, right? And how work is assigned to them on Article 31 that Mr. Kimbrough will tell you, I would assure you, Mr. Kimbrough will tell you, many of our conversations are regarding schedules, shifts, overtime, extra work, things of that nature. Choose-ups, is that correct, sir?
Yes, sir.
So why isn't it we have the ability maybe, and I trust the knowledge of both Ms. Ellis and Mr. Kimbrough, to work with our side, is that something that could be looked at between now and the next time we meet, so that at least we have those big articles potentially agreed to?
Yeah, well, we heard your suggestion earlier today, and we have had some conversation about whether that's something that is workable, and if it is something we can do, like how it would carry itself out. And we're gonna continue to have that conversation, and maybe it is something that we could do between now and the next session, and we can get back to you on that. We
Because
just
we-
haven't completed that conversation today on our team.
All right, because, we've kind of attempted that before with like emergency working conditions. We had a little session, but we never followed up with it. We never followed through with it. It becomes a little frustrating, that's all. I mean, I feel like I'm trying to point out that there are many articles in the contract that I feel like we're just dragging through. I mean.
Well, I think that, Mike, to be perfectly honest with you, with no rancor, I mean, there's frustration all the way around. And I understand the unique history of these negotiations, and so that's contributed to all of this. But, this is a particularly long and detailed collective bargaining agreement. It's coming off an agreement that's in the private sector.
Right.
Going into the public sector, there's a lot of complications that I think have contributed to the fact that it's taken as long as it has. Both sides, I think, want to have these negotiations concluded. But like take 31, 33, and 36, and we spent a lot of time creating those articles, and the language in those articles is there from our perspective for a reason. I think that, yeah, there's a lot of articles that could be done away with. There's a lot of articles that we probably don't need in this contract. There's a lot of articles and issues that because of their detail is, I think, slowing our negotiations down, personally. I think if you look at the old Sarasota contract, I haven't looked at the new one because, like Curtis said, it hasn't been published yet. But I mean, that's a contract that's much more of a concise document than what we've been doing. It's got 26 articles instead of 58, 50. I think it's 23 articles. 23 articles instead of 50 plus articles. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot that's there. I'm not blaming anybody, but this is what we've been dealing with over these years. So,
Well, Mike, you know,
and I think it's I think it's been a difficult challenge. I would bet, I don't know the history of Sarasota. I would bet though that Sarasota, for a long time, has been a public sector contract with a public sector employer. And it probably, like most public sector contracts, incorporates by reference, the county policies. And adheres to the same policies that all the other employees do. There's a bedrock, acceptance of standard policies and benefits like group health insurance, and there isn't a lot of negotiations about those things. But we don't have that contract. We brought one of those contracts to you very early on. We brought a contract that was modeled after the operational services contract that we have with the county, that we negotiated. You negotiated with me, and we lived under that umbrella for many years. You didn't want to pursue that. You wanted to have a contract that looked like the contract you had with First Transport, whatever it was. Okay, I mean, that's where we're at. We've given you articles, language on all of these things. We gave you a contract with 55 plus articles, and we're slogging through it. We get 4 or 5 at a time. But if you have 55 articles and you're doing 4 or 5 at a time, it's going to take you 10 sessions or more, because some of these articles.
Curtis?
Let me jump in, Mike. So, as everybody knows, I go around the state of Florida and negotiate with contracts. Jacksonville as well, Tampa, a bunch of other ones, all over Florida. And the ones I don't, I keep up with. But here's what I would say. I would say about 80% of them are governmental transit agencies. And I would say that all of them use attorneys. I would say that all of them vary from 26 to 55 articles. But what I will say the difference here is, in Escambia County, is we negotiate 3-4 hours, one time. There's never been a time that we go past 3, 4, 5 o'clock. The decision makers leave. They plan on having the negotiations with us, and they leave. The county commissioners turn down the contract, but don't identify why. What are the specific issues? And say we come back and we negotiate NQTA already. It's taken 2 years plus years.
3 years. 3 years.
I'm not taking a hit at you, Mike, or anybody on your team. But the facts are the facts. ATU is ready to sit down, work long hours, days and nights, to get a contract, move this thing on, and not drag it on. ATU is ready to sit down and make those tough decisions and move forward. The collective bargaining period is what it is. Neither side's going to be happy about it, right? We're just not going to stand by and get it shoved down our throat. It's not going to happen. and we don't expect to give you a hard time on everything. I think we've shown that. My request earlier today was simple, that the decision makers in the room sit down and do longer days, sit down and dedicate the time to work this stuff out, to have more consecutive days of doing something to make progress, and work better for the workers and for our members. If that can't be agreed to, then we still got a philosophical issue about how important collective bargaining is in the city of, the county of Muscatine County. I don't have this problem nowhere else, nowhere.
Let me add one thing that Curtis just said. Mike, I've had numerous conversations with Ms. Ellis and Mr. Kimbrough about the attendance article. Because it is the intent of the union to encourage our people to come to work. We want that. But we've expressed that there are concerns, parameters around it that are causing what we believe, from our perspective, are causing attendance issues. And I named a few today. But we believe if we sit together with the people that run the system, that we're going to be able to work and get through this things. I'm used to labor negotiations where we sit in a conference room like ECAT and we knock it out for 2-3 days in a row and we get it done. We don't do these short little sessions for partial day when he's absolutely right, when some of the biggest decision makers leave the room. That makes it impossible to get through where we want to be. And you know, I really think that we're hurting the management team at ECAP by not working together to find a way to get through this labor agreement, because you've got to admit, 75 years of having a union on that property, the union's not going anywhere. We need to work together to make the employees feel secure with the labor agreement that they have in place. Right now, they don't feel that way. They don't feel like there's even an intent to get a labor agreement. So I just feel like we should be, you know, Curtis, we can hear you.
Yeah.
And you know, I just feel like yes, I get the big picture, Mike, of the things that are tied to public sector. I get that. And I understand where you're coming from. Now, obviously, you take the operational unit, which we're doing tomorrow, right? That operation.
Hold on, Mike, I gotta jump in. Help me to understand this public sector thing when every other public sector employee is not, in transit ain't having the same issues.
That's right.
At this point, I think all we can do is just maybe throw some dates out and hope to get something scheduled in short order. I don't know what else to say. I mean, we can belabor the point, but yeah, we need to continue. We need to meet again. So if you have any dates, Mr. Howard, I can,
Yes, but.
I can
so
relay this to Jana.
I understand what
Jana.
you just said, but is there a commitment to anything different than what we're talking about? We need a commitment to do and resolve.
We have been
Not
committed
just
throughout
every
this
meeting,
entire
yeah.
process, Mr. Howard, and we will continue working together and negotiating in good faith. And I don't have Ms. Gilly's calendar or Jana's calendar, but I will relay any dates that you have. And
No disrespect, but it doesn't feel like it's commitment when we're meeting every 3 months for a half a day.
we will hope to get something
So,
scheduled as soon as possible, but we can't finalize that right this minute. So all we can do,
So-
if you can provide some dates.
So I would like to, the 10th and the 11th of March. Thursday the 4th, no, that can't happen. The 10th and 11th, and then,
Of March?
yes. And then, can probably do the 15th and the 16th. No, I can't do the 16th. I can do the 15th. So those are 3 dates right now, in March.
Okay, well, what we'll do.
And what I will ask you two guys to do on the record is if people have to leave next time, that they come to negotiations knowing that we're not gonna finish today, they should have dates on their calendar that they're available, that you guys can offer to us. It has been months sometimes, a month, 30 days and better, to get calendars locked down. I find that to be very difficult as a lead negotiator to try to move forward with negotiations when you're waiting for people to coordinate something that they should have been prepared when you walked in the door.
Mr. Howard, do you have any dates in April?
Sure can. April, I can offer the 7th and 8th.
Curtis, the 7th is the, wait, what day is the 7th? Is that the
It's
arbitration?
a Wednesday.
That's the arbitration from our 1-day suspension.
Okay, so then I can offer
It could be
the 8th.
the 8th.
I can offer the 15th. You can offer the 22nd. And I can offer the 28th and 29th.
Okay,
The sooner I know, the better, because, I mean, I'll block them out for like 5 days, but
Okay.
after that, I can't hold them just to hold them.
I understand.
Well,
I will send Jana those dates today, and she will get back.
Thank
to
you.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Sure.
all right, well, with that,
Mike, just one last.
I think we,
I just want to note to you, some of those single days, if your team is willing to let us work with Ms. Ellis and Mr. Kimbrough, if their schedules are available, we could address 33, 31, 36, 39. Those are,
we'll let you know if
Okay.
that's, I just have to make sure everybody's comfortable with that, Mike. It'll be we're gonna work on it.
yeah.
Okay. All right, well, Curtis, thank you very much for your time today. Mike and your
Yeah.
team, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate you guys as well, and, look forward to speaking with you soon.
All right, thank you. I
Have a
guess,
safe trip home, man.
Yeah, be
Thank
safe
you.
driving.
Yeah.
and, I guess I see you again tomorrow.
Oh, that's right, tomorrow.
Okay.
That's right. Sorry, you got me so going here, I forgot about tomorrow.
All right, well, I'm gonna
All
run.
right.
Do you drive all the way back today?